NetEvents Global Press Summit 2015 was held in Tiburon, California, and the opening keynote session was provided by Jeff Schmitz, chairman of OpenCloud Connect. He was talking about cloud interoperability standards and opened by entertaining the audience of press and analysts with an anecdote about a huge fire in Baltimore in 1904 that drew lots of fire engines from all over the place.
As all these additional crews got in, they started to try to hook up to the fire hydrants. And as they began to do so, they found out there was a problem. The problem was there was no standard for fire hydrants in the United States. And the result was, despite there being 35 years of attempts to standardize these fire hydrants so that as you called in other groups, they could use their pumps and put out these kinds of fires, it really didn't make any progress. And not surprisingly either, if you think about the way the infrastructure was built, and there's some analogies here in the cloud. And that is, when cities began to build their infrastructure, what did they do? Well, they went out and found a contractor. That contractor found a manufacturer to manufacture their fire hydrants, and they started installing them. Now, interestingly enough, they ended up with over 600 different fittings for the fire hydrants. Now, and these companies that built these fittings were saying, well, hey, look, we're built this proprietary technology, so we don't want to share, right? So once you start building your infrastructure in the city of Baltimore, they had a monopoly. It was fantastic. In fact, they went so far as to patent most of these designs. Seems kind of counterintuitive that you would patent this kind of technology, but that's in fact what happened. So the earlier entrants ended up patenting these designs. Well, what was the result? Well, the result was the city largely burnt down. And it burnt over 2 days because while they had all this equipment and people there, they couldn't put the fire out. They couldn't use the equipment. They couldn't make it happen.
Clearly there was a problem with standards. And what about the cloud? Same thing. So, Jeff talked about the standardization that the MEF has brought to the telecoms world, such as the common language, connectivity, and certification.
So I think these are a few critical lessons that the MEF provided for any kind of standardization, and probably more importantly to cloud as we talk about that today. I want to take you through kind of a stylized, simplistic view of the cloud. And the cloud services, at least the way that we look at them. So certainly probably in the paramount of any service is, in fact, the enterprise, and that's those circles at the bottom. So what kind of services do the enterprise want? And today, in some of the studies that we've looked at, today, most enterprises today already have 10 to 15 cloud services already, right? So this business is scaling fast. This business isn't a $10 billion business in a few years. This business is a $100 billion business plus already. So scale is huge. Secondly, when those enterprises try to connect their cloud services globally, all right, find the plugin. Okay, send out the fire alarms again, Alex. We're in trouble. All right. Okay, well, see, crazy things can happen. So from a enterprise perspective, they need to connect. And when you look at the players that we connect with, a lot of them are the same that the MEF uses, right? We have service providers, but we have new entities like data center providers and cloud carriers. Great, so the problem's getting a little bit more complex. But on top of that, I have all these cloud service providers. And oddly enough, some of them are following the same path we did with the fittings in Baltimore. If I'm a large infrastructure as a service, let's say, provider, I can work with the service providers and make them use my standard, right? Because they have a lot of business. Here, you need to plug your network into me in this way. Okay, great. And the big guys can do that. Unfortunately, there's thousands of other cloud service providers. And as I mentioned, these enterprises are using a host of these today. Well, how do they plug in a standard way? How do they have a fair chance and a fair playing field to capture part of that market?
Jeff then said that the MEF model was a good one, the right one to follow, and highlighted the need for rapid change in today's world.
If we're going to have to work at this speed and deal with a more complex problem, I think we're going to have to do a few things. And one is we'll follow the model of the MEF where it makes sense. And the first one is let's create a common language. Now in the OpenCloud Connect, we've already done that. And we've recently released our reference architecture. And you'll see some press releases out actually today, and we'll be showing that at Interop next week. So how do we create a common language so we're not spending hours or a week figuring out just the common language to connect those cloud services to the cloud provider? We've already started this. The second piece is let's go back to the user, right? Let's define the kinds of services that are needed to support those cloud services, and let's build use cases. And again, this is an area we've already started in the OpenCloud Connect. We are going to be demonstrating a number of use cases next week, including connecting a cloud service provider in a secure fashion over a real network, as one example. So amongst others. So you'll see that starting next week. And lastly, and maybe most urgently, is we need to go towards more of a DevOps model, a more agile approach to standards. And the OpenCloud Connect is one of the players doing this. Other people are looking at proof of concepts and ways to expedite standards. We're using a DevOps model. And what that means is we've already started in South San Francisco at a lab. We have real connectivity there, real equipment, where we're testing out these use cases. We're not going to spend years typing out and writing out the perfect standard and then spend years selling it and trying to implement it. We're testing and seeing what works right now today. This is what we're doing today. And then we're going to take it and leverage that information into actually building the interface standards themselves. When I think about what's the world I'd like to see us live in, well, today we know, and we'll use infrastructure as a service as an example, today I can very rapidly go out and provision whatever CPU and storage I want, put up my application, and life is good. But if I want a secure, robust, high-performance global network to support that, that takes on the order of weeks or sometimes months to provision. So our vision at the OpenCloud Connect is, hey, we'd like to empower the enterprise, not to be stuck with one vendor, but to have a set of standards so we can very rapidly, instantly provision the connectivity as well as the cloud services across a relatively complex environment in a very rapid way. That's our goal, and that's what we're building our standards around.
So you heard it here first. OpenCloud is the future, and standards will help to cloud enable the world.